Duca,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brett Hansen,
Here.
Councilmember Lisa Lake. Here. Councilmember Robert Oxmacher, Councilmember Luke Wagner.
Here. Great. Welcome, officers. It's nice to have you guys all here. I feel so safe. Do we have any amendments to the agenda? Okay, great. So Chief and Sergeant, do you want to come up here? And I'm going to let you guys take over for a little bit.
Carly, would you step forward? Alicia and Nick and Sharice Herman, if you want to come up. Hi. Well, Mayor and Council, we are privileged to recognize these 4 folks for a life-saving award. And the dictionary describes a neighbor as a person who lives close to another. A friend is a person who knows one another, and the bond is a mutual relationship excluding the family. And an angel is a messenger of God, but the word suggests goodness and refers to someone who offers help and comfort. On Saturday, May 20th, 2023, at approximately 7:00 p.m., a 4-year-old child experienced a tragic accident by falling out of his bedroom window. He fell approximately 22 feet to the pavement below. Neighbors of the residents immediately responded and began life-saving efforts for the child. These residents worked well together, even in the midst of a chaotic and traumatic scene. They called 911, and then they performed chest compressions on the child without hesitation. When the first responders arrived, the child was stabilized. The officers were informed that without these residents' quick action, the outcome of the incident would have been less than desirable. Medical professionals on the scene stated that these citizens saved the actions or in the 4-year-old's life as a result. So you are hereby commended, and we want to, on behalf of the town council and the police department, provide you with some certificates.
And so if there's anybody out there that'd like to take pictures closer while this is going on, feel free to walk through the gate and do that. Chief, there's 2 people that are taking pictures, so maybe stand by whoever they're trying to take pictures of. Thank you. Thank you. Chief, did you want to identify him by name?
I would, Mayor. Sergeant Richards and Officer Morgan, please step forward. On Tuesday, June 27th at 6:09 a.m., Sergeant Chuck Richards and Officer Chad Morgan responded to 4500 Weitzel, the Walmart store, on a reported assault. Upon arrival, the sergeant and officer determined that it was not an assault, but an active overdose. A 19-year-old female was lifeless, pale, not breathing, and no pulse was detected. Sergeant Richards administered a dose of Narcan and then began chest compressions. Officer Morgan retrieved a ventilation mask and then administered a second dose of Narcan. The young woman then began to breathe on her own. PFA, rescue, and ambulance personnel stabilized the woman and then transported her to the hospital. She survives to this day. Had it not been for the life-saving efforts of Sergeant Richards and Officer Morgan, the outcome may have been catastrophic. Sergeant Richards and Officer Morgan are hereby awarded the life-saving commendation.
Congratulations, officers.
Now, the officers received these pins, which are red and white in color, but they only arrived this afternoon. So tradition speaks of you each get a bag of lifesavers. And Mayor, I don't see the Gross family, so I think we can.
We'll hold on. Yeah.
Yep.
Do you want to take? Oh, you did. You're way ahead of me. Sergeant and Chief, thank you very much for doing that. And to the lifesavers out there, you guys did a great job. Congratulations. That's very, hopefully you are proud of yourself. All right. Melissa, do we have any public comment?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Mr. Bill Jenkins.
Surprise.
That's a hard one to follow. Good evening. My name is Bill Jenkins, 5507 Sugarloaf Court. Just a quick comment. I know the community is very interested in the outcome of the firehouse and adjacent property sale. And I understand that the deadline for putting in offers on that property was July 7th. I think it would be really helpful to the community if there was an opportunity to see what the offers were and also to understand what the town's criteria is for selecting the winning offer. And with that, I'll sit down. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll make a quick comment. I believe we're going to discuss that in the August meeting. Anybody else, Melissa?
Unless I missed, did anybody else here sign up to speak? Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Consent agenda. Any council person have a comment on this consent agenda? Could I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously with one abstention. Reports. I'll do a quick one. I mean, we've got such an amazing event staff and they had absolute hell to pay on July 4th. And they just were smiling and working as hard as they could. And they pulled off the fireworks, and the people that were able to see the fireworks said it was just incredibly great. And so congratulations to Callie and Courtney and to everybody else that was a part of that event staff. I'd like to congratulate them and thank them for their hard work, because it was no fun. And you know, the band headed up by Bianca They just consider themselves part of the staff and helping, and they did a great job too. Anybody else? Okay. Resolution number 44, series 2023, a resolution approving vacation of certain landscape, pedestrian, and utility easement created in the Riverbend subdivision. Kevin.
Thank you, Mayor. Hopefully that's shown up. As you'd mentioned, this is a resolution approving a vacation of a certain landscape, pedestrian, and utility easement created in the Riverbend subdivision. This is merely on the property just at the southwest corner of Harmony Road and Signal Tree Drive, primarily up along the frontage of Harmony Road. So back in 2015, Riverbend Ventures platted the Riverbend subdivision and created an easement along Harmony Road, the Harmony Road frontage, at 50 feet in width for the purposes of providing an area for utilities, landscaping, and pedestrian access. With the properties within the Riverbend starting to develop, the location of the utility, sidewalk, and landscape areas are starting to be defined. So the request from the property owner at this point is to remove 10 feet of the easement for 110 or 10 feet of the 50-foot easement for a length of 110 feet along the frontage of Harmony Road to align with our Harmony Corridor standards from for allowing buildings to encroach into the 50-foot setback. The applicant has done a utility locate exercise, and the utilities in this location are closer to the Harmony Road and actually are within a different 26-foot wide utility easement that is within the 50-foot easement. And therefore there's no conflict with the utilities in the location. And then as part of the next item, part of the development of this lot, they are providing landscaping and the 10-foot Harmony Road side trail along the front of this development. And neither the landscaping, open space, or that trail will be impacted by the reduction of the 10-foot easement in this area. The owner's Riverbend Development, represented tonight by Alex Schuman. If you have any questions for him, this application has been reviewed by staff and it meets the criteria set forth in the land use code for a vacation easement. With that, I could be happy to answer any questions for you, or if you have any questions of the property owner.
Kevin, with this vacation, if we end up having concerns that need to be addressed in the next agenda item, is there a relation here with this easement? Do we have any concerns of if this were to be approved, but we have other just issues to work out on the next agenda item? Is there any conflict there?
There would be no conflict. This
Okay.
this is essentially.
We can pass this cleanly separate from the other item. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Do I have a motion to approve resolution number 44, series 2023?
Is this a public hearing comment agenda item?
Oh yeah, there is
This one
public
is, yep.
hearing. So is there anybody that set up for public hearing?
I will open the public hearing at 6:12 and I don't have anybody signed up. So I'll close the the public hearing at 6:12.
Thank you. Okay, do I have a motion for resolution number 44, series 2023, a resolution approving vacation of certain landscape, pedestrian, and utility easement created in the Riverbend subdivision?
I move to approve a resolution approving a vacation of certain landscape, pedestrian, and utility easement created in the Riverbend subdivision.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 with 1 abstention. That's not right, the right word. What's the word I want?
You can just say it passes unanimously because of the council members here, it passed unanimously. So
Okay.
there's just one that's absent today, but he doesn't vote either way.
Okay, thanks, Carolyn. Resolution number 45, series 2023, a resolution approving Riverbend Lot 1 site plan.
Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned, this is a site plan proposal for what's known as the Riverbend Lot 1 within the Riverbend subdivision. Owner is Riverbend Development LLC, represented by Alex Schuman. Applicant is TB Group. Just as the first one, this is for the subject property located at the southwest corner of Signal Tree and Harmony Road. The zoning of the property is CC Community Commercial with the Harmony Corridor overlay on top. This proposal is for 2 commercial buildings totaling roughly 44,000 square feet on just over 3 acres. Within the Riverbend subdivision. These were originally 3 lots that an administrative plat was done to combine them all into 1 lot. This development, building 1 will be a 1-story building totaling roughly 14,700 square feet. That building is adjacent to Harmony Road, and they are anticipating providing retail and restaurant users within that building. Building 2, which will be adjacent to Signal Tree Drive, will be a 2-story building totaling roughly 29,000 square feet with the anticipation of retail and office users. The parking requirement for roughly 23,000 square feet of retail would be 76 spaces. The requirement for roughly 13,600 square feet of office would be 34 spaces. And then the requirement for roughly 6,600 square feet of restaurant with patio seating would be 70 spaces for a total of 180 spaces required. This development is proposing 144 spaces, including 2 electric vehicles charging spaces. The reason why they are doing that is per section 5810 of the land use code, any multi-tenant buildings may be eligible for a parking reduction of up to 20% of the required spaces. And the reduction from 180 to 144 is at that 20% reduction. This plan also includes 33% of the site to be landscaped, meeting the minimum requirement of 25, with 5% of it being usable, which the usable space is done by gathering spaces throughout the site, which will be furnished with planter beds and benches and pergolas and other amenities to allow for gathering within the site. This site plan was reviewed against section 510 of the land use code for compliance with the Harmony Corridor standards. This plan meets all of the architectural, landscape, and site requirements from those standards, except for a height exception that they are being asked to be waived within this site. The DRC has reviewed this and the waiver requests that they have asked for and found them to be acceptable. So that first request is the 20% reduction of parking that I just mentioned. And then the next one is for a height exception of up to 15% per section 29910 of the land use code. They're requesting that the height of the roof be increased from 35 feet to just over 38.5 feet on the 2-story building to accommodate for some gable roof features that they have, and then screening of rooftop mechanical equipment. This site plan, since it is 2 buildings, is required to have a neighborhood meeting. A neighborhood meeting was held on October 6th of 2022 to gather feedback on the plan. There were no residents that had shown up, and so therefore no observation report was created. This site plan went to the Planning Commission on June 20th and was recommended for approval by 5-0 vote. At the Planning Commission meeting, some of the commissioners did have a concern about the reduction in parking and if the 20% was too much of a reduction, but ultimately they did recommend approval by 5-0 votes. This site has been reviewed against the land use code and found it to be in conformance minus those two requests that they have. Other than that, I can turn it over to Alex if you have a brief presentation, or if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Go ahead, Brett.
I do have some questions for Alex, if you don't mind, just to make sure I have some things clear. It's my understanding from watching the planning commission meeting that you don't yet know the number of tenants that you would have in these buildings. Is that true?
That is correct.
Okay. Do you know at all which tenants you might have so far? Do you have any lined up under contract that you can tell us about yet, or not yet?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the exact number, that is uncertain, but we are in discussion with 2 restaurant users and a shared office use on the 2nd floor currently.
Okay. It was my understanding from that meeting that, some of the planning commissioners expressed a concern about the parking, and there was a discussion that maybe some of the land on the west side could be made available in some fashion. Did I interpret those statements correctly for temporary parking, something of that nature?
Well, so there was discussion on that. I guess what I had mentioned that evening is that I do have the west property side under contract, but I guess to clarify that, I guess I do own a 1.2 acre parcel that is adjacent there currently. I'm intending to develop out. I don't know if we have a master map there, Kevin, that you can pull up, but I believe, with full build out, the cross parking between the next phase and this one, once they're ultimately built out, will serve, I think, serve its purpose well.
Okay. But in the interim, there is land that's available for overflow parking for those, if we need 36 spaces more, is that available?
So, yeah,
no?
so the little box or rectangle or square, I guess they're just right there that Kevin's pointing out. So I do own that property currently. And so that is a 1.2 acre parcel. It is intended to be developed with the next phase of the project, and it will be parking. And there will be approximately about another 100 parking spaces on that lot that will serve both the first phase and second phase of the project. So I think, in everyone's best interest, obviously, if there is a point in time, I think in the midterm, if there is a parking need, that definitely could be explored for, some kind of a temp parking solution.
Okay. Those are all my questions at the moment. I'll have some comments.
So I go ahead and, Alex, you can sit down for a second and then I'll probably have you come back up and comment. So thanks. I have the same concern with parking on it that I don't know if you have a concern or not, but okay, that I do too. And Alex, you do a great job, and I have no question that you're going to build a great quality product. But I think my concern about parking's maybe a little more than your concern about parking. And I understand there was a fairly robust discussion at P&Z about parking, and I see Phil back there in the corner. Phil, would you mind sort of giving us a summary of what all went in there?
Thanks, Mayor. A little bit I can add. We definitely had a concern about that. Our first choice would have been that we didn't have this variance. I think the multi-tenant aspect of this, we understood that had it not been for the fact that it was, Alex would ideally like to have 2 restaurants in there, recognizing that first of all, that the town is, the residents are starved, no pun intended, for more restaurants. But with 2 restaurants in there, despite the fact it's multi-tenant, we recognize that we might very well need all those from lunchtime service through dinner. So our first choice would have been that there wouldn't have been a variance. But appreciate Mayor Pro Tem Hanson watching our meeting. Once we brought up the issue of the overflow parking, and Mr. Schuman very graciously acknowledged that he would certainly bend over backwards to make sure that happened. That eased our minds somewhat. So absent of a reduction in the footprint of the office buildings, this seems like the next best option, unless there is a way, and we didn't see a way during Planning Commission meeting for him to add more paved parking spaces at that time. We did try, as you may have noticed, we did try to make that a formal condition. But staff pointed out that that was technically, as I understand it, not possible to make it a condition. So his pledge, if you will, was sufficient for us going forward to go ahead and approve it 5-0.
And I don't understand the pledge necessarily. I mean, Alex, do you want to comment on that, or do you want to, Phil? I don't care.
Well, I guess I don't know. Yeah, I guess the technical term, but I mean, I guess it's in both everyone's best interest. Obviously, if I've got users and tenants that we've got a parking problem that needs to get figured out, I guess it's in my interest as the landowner to solve that problem for them, to make sure that they're successful and ultimately stay in business. Because as we know, obviously, yeah, if there becomes a parking problem and sales go down, that doesn't do anyone justice.
You know what, I guess my concern, Alex, is that we have another DC Oaks issue where for a period of time, people were parking out in the mud way away from everything, and there wasn't enough marked parking for that development. And this looks like it's awful close to emulating that. Do you want to deal with comment?
I think the main difference here, I think, our whole second floor of the second building is tagged for office of roughly 14,000 square feet. And so, that should obviously not be used during the nighttime traffic that hopefully the restaurants. And so I think that is the background, I think, of, the reduction being allowed in a mixed use scenario. And so I think that between those different uses at different times, they should offset each other. I think if we're dealing with all straight retail and the office component wasn't there, obviously the reduction wouldn't be possible, or would I just, ask for that?
Okay. Do you have anything further? Phil, do you have anything further?
No.
Okay. And Alex, do you have anything further?
No,
Okay.
To answer further questions.
I'm asking
Luke.
Kevin, can you tell us, has there been parking reductions that have been approved in the past and how much that was?
Yeah, so I like to refer to it as the Neenan development, the one just to the north of us. That development, when it was done, got a roughly 13% reduction. They were required about 205 spaces. And they got a reduction of about 13% down to roughly 185, 183 spaces. So they got a reduction within that one. And then the over in Timnath Ranch, there was the proposal of an office medical park. And they requested a reduction of that same criteria just because of the multi-tenant nature of office and retail. So the two multi-tenant developments essentially that we have approved in town have both asked for that reduction.
And as tenants start to fill into this property, can you walk me through kind of what that looks like and how we'll know as this project continues on what that looks like for parking and how that's calculated to determine if this is appropriate?
Yeah, so when essentially a end user comes in, they have to submit basically a change of use to the town along with their building permit to be able to do their tenant finish. When that comes in, we evaluate what the square footage is, what the use is to create a parking demand by that user. Staff then basically does a running tally of the amount of parking spaces that is basically already generated as the users go through. So, XYZ user, has, 10, 15, 20 spaces. And as the tally goes on and can change if users, go away and new ones come in. If we get to a point where the last user in, there's 15 spaces that are essentially allocated left, they need 30 spaces, then there's a conversation with staff and that developer or user saying that there's not enough required spaces for that. And then at that time, if there is development to the south, to the west, that has the ability for shared parking, then that's where that can pick it up. future things like that. If there's nothing available for overflow parking, that's where the conversation would be with the developer to say, do you need to, you need to put in your overflow parking at this time to accommodate that, or you need to find a different user. So as staff goes through over time with getting the users in, we do keep a tally of the parking demand and what's available left.
Thank you.
Yep.
No questions, just the same concerns about parking. Well, and I guess I will ask one thing. So what options are there at this point, the way it's all laid out, to add any parking? Is there any option the way it's laid out right now?
Well, I mean, I guess the only option would be to discuss, I guess overflow on a different lot, I guess, which is not site planned part of this proposal tonight.
And for staff, do we have the same restrictions that Planning Commission had as far as requiring overflow that is on a different part that we're not voting on tonight? Like, how do we?
So in that regard, since it's not a part of this lot, not a part of this site plan, I'll defer to Carolyn on that specific answer, but since it's not on this lot, the only thing would be to get potentially an easement from adjacent property to allow for that overflow parking. That would really be the only thing to that is, having that put in place. But I don't think there really would be a condition of they have to do that at that point, but I'll let Carolyn chime in if I'm off on that.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. So I think your options today are to approve the site plan as presented. You could table it and, ask them to revise it to add additional parking spaces, which my understanding is that would mean a redesign of the building footprint, or required to come in with, an easement showing some off-site parking as an option. Otherwise, that would be dealt with at a future plat approval and of some of the other adjacent properties. So really what's before you today is, are you comfortable approving this with the reduction that's requested? Because that is the only thing that's before you today. There's not an existing easement or an existing other usage that we know of.
Thank you.
I think I want to make a comment before, if you don't mind, Brett. I think this council has pretty much consistently identified its reluctance to want to pass a resolution for properties that are granted additional parking beyond what the code is, beyond what the land use code is. And I think we've been pretty staunch on our request that we do not appreciate the increase in parking beyond what we have set up in our rules and regulations. So I would encourage staff in the future not, and I repeat, not give these expansion parkings any further, because it puts us in a funny spot. I mean, Alex is, got huge integrity. He probably bought the property with the idea that he's going to be able to get these parking spots and works out his return on investment with it. And I don't think it's fair to him to sit there and maybe jerk out the rug from him. But on the other side, he should have never had to go down that path to start with.
Mayor, I think that would be on us to change the land use code, because if the land use code allows, I think that puts staff in a tough situation because they're just following the documents, I think, that we've all kind of approved. So maybe that's something we think about, where instead it's like a 10% reduction or something like that. Maybe we as a council can look at what it would take to change something like that, perhaps.
And I hear you, and I appreciate it, but it's also a variance. So at that point, you're going against what we already set down as rules.
Well, but in our rules, we say that we allow up to a 20% reduction. for these situations.
Okay,
Yeah, or that we can allow, I guess, is really,
okay.
yeah.
I would comment that in general with a multi-tenant, multi-building site plan, there can be some good use to the reduction in parking requirements because you can get a lot more diversity in tenants. And so I'm certainly fine with the request and asking. My concern is essentially the historical trends that the mayor mentioned. For example, we look at the Neenah development. It's got a gym that closed, and that would be a significant impact to the parking situation there. It has a carryout restaurant that nobody ever dines in. It has another restaurant that has been in there here saying that they're not as busy as they'd like to be. They're working to improve that situation. I think it's premature to say that the Neenah development is our gold standard for how a parking reduction works. I know with the daycare we had a few years ago, and you may have even been here for that, Alex, if I recall correctly, but we gave waivers to expand the parking lot on the daycare in Timnath Ranch. We certainly get plenty of feedback from the town, negative feedback about the parking situation around Walmart, around Chick-fil-A, Starbucks. We just had an election where a business was rejected, and one of the reasons commonly cited was concerns about traffic in that parking lot area. It is a top of mind concern in this town that anytime a business is asked for, what's the traffic going to be like around this business? I look at the reasons in the parking narrative, and I'm not sure I agree with all of them. For example, saying the code doesn't account for kitchen in the square footage. I think our code does assume that restaurants have a kitchen. I believe that's an industry standard that we take when we're writing the code with the number of parking spots required per square feet in a restaurant. Same reason we don't differentiate with conference rooms and equipment rooms or storage rooms in the office spaces. I think it's a general average number we come up with. I also see the parking layout, in the parking narrative, justification narrative, it says the parking layout allows for a future connection to the site west of the project site. In the future, there'll be reciprocal sharing. Again, I think that's good justification to explore the idea of a reduction in parking, but that also seems to acknowledge to me that there will be times when this is not sufficient parking, that we will be sharing, that the other side will at times not have enough, and so they'll use your parking space, and there'll be times where yours is not enough, and so you're using theirs. And so given the information I have in front of me, I'm not comfortable voting to approve this as is today. My preference, I think, would be to, if we could formalize some kind of requirement on the overflow parking. I'm not sure if in the interim, it's a big deal that there's some, I'll even say in the dirt, parking spaces, but I would like it formalized simply because we have no idea how long it'll take for the site to develop. We have no idea how long it'll take for the site to the west to develop. Sometimes that happens really fast. Sometimes it takes 5-10 years. And I look at, for example, the apartment to the south of you. We saw this same thing where there was a parking reduction, and we were left in kind of a weird limbo situation where we were getting a lot of complaints from people about there not being enough parking in that apartment complex. And so they had to make up for it in the second phase. And it feels like we're repeating that process here a little bit when really, I think on the front half, we ought to have enough parking, and then the sharing later down the road can allow for a reduced amount. So I think that's how I see it as the cleanest method is if you already own the land, let's, table this today, get something formalized with how that'll all work. I don't think I see a need to push for a reduction in building footprint or things of that nature. That would be my 2 cents in terms of what I would, or maybe 3 cents. I went a little long, but that would be my suggestion for what we at least explore on this.
Alex, it looks like you'd like to say something.
Well, I guess I could, I think the comment made on planning commission evening was that, I had mentioned that I had the West project under contract, but I think what we had missed was I actually do own 1 acre of the property currently that I guess I could pledge, or I guess I'm happy to tie to this approval this evening to figure out how we can push this site forward. Tonight, I do have contractors locked in and ready to go, assuming we've got approvals, and we've been working on this, I think, almost 18 months, I guess, with staff. And as you did indicate, there was a formula to the purchase price I had paid based on square footage, and this was figured out very early on based upon our square footage and the assumed parking reduction that we could fit and maximize the project here on this corner to bring, these uses to town.
So Carolyn, put your thinking cap on, please.
Yeah,
And-
I think I have an idea. Go
Well,
ahead.
I'm going to maybe make it easier to you too.
Okay.
Alex and his company have been around for a long time. He's got huge integrity. I have no doubt that if he would tell us, this is what I'm going to do with that extra acre, that we don't need to formalize it in my mind. So that I'm just throwing that out. I totally agree with everything Brett said. But I know, I'm sure, Alex, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure you've been chomping at the bit to start doing some groundwork and stuff there. And I don't think we want to discourage it. You've done a great job with a lot of developments around town, and we don't want to the last thing we want to do is discourage you. And so I'm willing to sit there and say that give us and you help me out with the wording, Carolyn, pledge, Boy Scouts word of honor, whatever we want to. Pardon? Yeah. Yes. Whatever. And it could be as easy as a statement of intent that we could maybe go forward with.
Well, I think that there could certainly be an entry into the minutes of the intent is to use the adjacent property so that if that property came forward with development, there'd be some record of that, but it would be hard to find unless you're searching through the records of those minutes. Certainly there could be a written statement of intent to use that property that could be written up tonight. Another option is to make this a conditional approval and to say that approval of the waiver of the parking requirement down by 20% is conditioned on obtaining an easement on the adjacent property that would run with this property that would allow for overflow parking. And I don't know how many spots that needs to be, or if it's the full property or what you need that to look like, but that would be the other way to accomplish it and have it be formalized into the record.
Would her second alternative work for what you need done, Alex?
So drafting that as an easement or
right.
I guess
So
at what point, and then I guess at what point is the parking lot, I guess, triggered, I guess at the point it's needed, or would it go in here at the first part of this project or?
well, I think that there's some options, but I think what it would do is it'd be a condition to work. Yeah, I guess it depends on what you're comfortable with. If you really think
Alex,
it needs
give
an
us-
extra 33 extra spots, then it'd be an agreement right now to have an easement for the extra spots.
Alex, give us what you feel comfortable with, and we might adjust it obviously, but give us what you'd feel comfortable with. And let's see if we can work with that. So
Mark, if I could jump in just for a second.
Yes, you can.
I think it goes back to Luke's comment earlier that as each specific user is identified, a specific parking requirement will be identified. So if the easement is granted, as the last tenant comes in, if you find there's a deficit of spots, if the easement is granted, it could be utilized at that point. That would be my suggestion. There's not necessarily going to be every building filled the minute he cuts the ribbon. And so you could take it piece by piece because you will have sufficient spots to handle multiple uses
so this is
there,
when
and the
the-
staff will be tracking those.
So this is when the town asks for additional parking spaces? Is that kind of the language you're?
That's what I would recommend.
Yeah.
So that
Because I
reach-
agree. It doesn't make sense to ask you to put overflow parking when you've got one business in there. That's silly. but-
Correct. Yeah. And I think obviously, we're tracking it by use.
Right.
And if there's a point where, I guess the uses that go in there, I guess do an overflow, and I'll even add to it. I guess if there's even before that, I guess if we're out there and we acknowledge that, I think, let's say we've got two very successful restaurants and the parking lot is all of a sudden overflowed. I mean, it's only in my best interest, I guess, to solve that problem for my tenant, because and then people can no longer park, they're no longer successful. So, I mean, I guess the two go hand in hand.
Okay.
As
And
far
I
as
don't
I'm
want you to
concerned.
be restrained on your options on businesses. You're able to recruit because we've already shrunk your parking, because as I'm hearing, staff is going to say, well, you don't have enough parking, you can't explore that business. Sorry. Like, I don't want you to be overly
Of
constrained
course.
when we don't
So
need
yeah,
to be.
I think, yeah, fortunately, yeah, I mean, I have that flexibility.
Okay.
So I know Alex is, I don't know this. Alex, you can nod. I know Alex is anxious to get started. Every developer I know was anxious to get
We're ready to
started.
break ground.
Yeah, that's what I figured. So I'm okay. I'm looking at my fellow council people here. I'm okay with assigning to Carolyn. I think you understand where we're coming from. I think Aaron identified a plan also that works. And I think it stays congruent with Brett and Luke's comments. So I'm fine. I'm good with passing it rather than tabling it, because then I'll stick around for a month or so. I'm fine with passing it. And we're not going to vote yet, Robert. So I'm fine with passing it, and that we assign to Carolyn and Aaron to prep up a contract that's in mutual agreement between Alex and the town.
I'm agreeable to that.
Okay.
Robert?
Are both of the parcels owned by the same property owner?
No, the other one is under Riverbend Car Wash LLC.
Okay. Okay, so you could do an easement right now. So I would
Yes, yeah,
anticipate.
and I'm the manager. Yes.
Great. So I'd anticipate it that it doesn't necessarily even need to be an agreement with the town. It could just be an easement agreement from one property owner to the other property owner that
Okay.
provides an easement for parking on this part for uses on this parcel when needed for land use approvals or when needed due to the traffic of the property, and we'll work on the exact wording of that. But so you would have a motion to approve conditioned on the adjacent property owner granting an easement for the parking. And then as soon as we get that easement in place, then it would take effect and they can go forward and break ground.
Okay. Are you good with that, Alex?
I'm agreeable.
Okay, Robert?
Yeah, first of all, I'll just let everyone know I'm not going to vote on this as I came in late. I was listening to things on the stream coming in, but I have not heard the entire conversation. So I'm not going to vote on this. But I do have some hesitations about these kind of wink and a nod agreement. Fact is, Timnath used to be a small town, but I really think we ought to be careful about doing things by the book.
Careful to, I'm sorry.
Careful about doing things by the book, not approving things with the assumption that things will work out. You know, there have been instances where we have found that there have been contracts or other agreements that weren't thoroughly vetted or thought out that down the line, you know, lead to litigation. And Alex, I know that's not your intent. You know, I agree with the mayor, but my inclination would be to hammer this stuff out, get the agreements in place, table it and come back in 2 weeks. I know you don't want to delay your project 2 weeks, but at least my thought would be let's do it right as opposed to do it fast.
And go ahead, Lisa.
Well, I was going to say, I feel comfortable if there is a condition written in to how we vote tonight, knowing that it will, that will have some legal binding to it. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I think for myself, I feel comfortable if we do it on that condition, knowing that staff will be monitoring who goes in there, and then whatever needs to be done behind the scenes between you all to get that signed. Just knowing that it's there for if and when we need it. Without knowing exactly who goes in, I'm sure it is tough to know exactly how much parking is needed based on the uses and things like that. But if you guys are able to do that as it comes up, so if it is 3 years down the road, then you can wait until that time. I guess the only concern I have related to that is there a way to ensure, and maybe the way it's written in is that that land is not used for a different purpose prior to this area being at full capacity. So rather than, I want to make sure that whatever those potential parking spaces are not then built on or something like that. So however it can be worded, and I'm assuming, Carolyn, that you can word it in a way that ensures that that won't be built on or something if this isn't filled for 5-6 years or something like that.
Lisa, could I suggest a change in what you meant to say? You made the comment behind the scenes, and I don't think you meant that.
No, I meant that because they're going to do it and I'm not going to be there when they do it. So for me, that's behind the scenes of what I'm doing. I'm not going to be there to read the exact wording that they put into the agreement.
But we do that all the time where we assign a duty to somebody to go ahead and do a specific document. So I don't see that being behind the scenes.
It's behind the scenes for me, it is.
Carolyn?
You're assigning something that will be administratively accomplished with approval by the town manager and the planning staff and town attorney, but it will not need formal council approval. So it will be transparent. Any contract you enter into is a public contract.
So I don't know if I want the record to reflect that we said behind the scenes.
I said it. I stand by what I meant, meaning I'm not going to be there for the language and the signing of that. That's what I meant by it.
Behind the scenes, meaning that it will not come back for additional
Correct.
council approval and will be accomplished administratively.
Correct.
Can we make that what she said instead of behind the scenes?
I explained what I meant. If the wording doesn't meet what you like, I don't know what to say to that. I agreed with what Carolyn
Okay.
just said, but
So Melissa, you make it what Carolyn said.
The minutes
Yeah.
usually aren't that specific that they don't have every verbatim comment. So obviously everyone's streaming all the discussion. It's in the recording,
What-
but they won't be.
I don't want
the
someone to think we're doing
minutes won't be that
something
verbatim.
nefarious.
Yeah.
I can put in the minutes that it's that council is approving it for administrative completion of the contract.
Yeah, that sounds fine. So Carolyn, would you get anything you'd like to say, Alex?
Nope,
Okay.
I'm good.
Carolyn, can you maybe state how we should word the motion to move forward?
Okay, so it's motion to approve with conditions, resolution 25, series 2023, a resolution approving the Riverbend Lot 1 site plan with the condition that the landowner be required to obtain an easement that will be recorded from the adjacent property owner that will allow for parking when needed for either land use approval based on the density of approval or for high traffic use, and that will not be revoked without the town's consent. And that's it, that's it.
Okay, do I have a motion to that effect?
I will move for approval with the condition as specified by Carolyn.
Do I have a second?
second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now, what do I say? Do I make a comment as to what Robert's doing? Because he is here, but
So you will just ask for anyone, you'll ask for opposed, then you ask for abstentions and he'll
okay, so
abstain.
opposed, does anybody opposed say nay? Do I have an abstention?
I abstain.
Motion carries 401.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
All So then who should I work with? Just work
With
with Carolyn
Carolyn.
directly after her? Okay.
Yeah, Carolyn will sit there, work it out, and you guys ought to be able to get it done. Well, it looks like she's getting ready to do it now. Okay. So,
All right, thank you.
all right. Thanks a lot, Alex. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.